Oh, hello. Welcome back. And this week, we're talking about the Four Noble Truths. In philosophy or in classes, the Four Noble Truths, depending on different interpretations, are suffering exists due to our attachments, there's a way out by following the Eightfold Path. So in high school, I do a little twist, a little interpretation, which is, I like to call them the Four knowable truths, which are suffering exists. And I want you to just pause a second. And when I've asked people, what is suffering to you? Go ahead and take a pause and think about that. Because I usually get two answers. One, people tend to maybe gravitate towards something in their past that's troublesome and that has created suffering. And the other answer I usually get is like some around the world kind of suffering that we see or we read about we read about in the news. And although that's true, that definitely could be a definition of suffering. My focus is more about school as is. So I think suffering exists. Well, I'm imagining you right now. It's late September. I imagined you sitting in a classroom in a desk. And I can imagine you just looking around the room right now. Now, it's not too hard for any of us to imagine this because most of us have been in that situation where we've been in a public school. Well, just think about that a second. You got up at what time this morning? And you're sitting in what class? Learning what again? And what is it that you need? If you are number one and you have needs, are those needs getting met right now? And could that not be a definition of suffering as well? So in my little twist, what I'm going to do is I'm saying that these are the four knowable truths. I think you know better than anybody that suffering exists due to untrue expectations or false expectations. It's almost like you're sitting at a desk right now, but what are you expecting to get? I'm imagining many students right now who are suffering with a myriad of issues, and yet you are maybe not addressing that at this moment, but you're learning other things that maybe the expectation is if you sit in this class, you get a good grade, you're going to get a piece of paper. Yeah? Okay. So I think it's due to false expectations, what your needs are based or in juxtaposition to what's actually happening right now. I like to think of it as there's a way through it by following an eightfold path. Now in Buddhism, like I said, there are four noble truths. In Newson School, it's four noble truths. And so let's go back to you for a second. So again, you're sitting in a class, I'm imagining, and I want you to just pause and ask yourself, what are you learning right now? Or imagining you're in school right now. What are you hearing? What are you seeing around you? What are you saying or what's being said upon you? What is your action? Again, I imagine you sitting at a desk for how many hours? What's your level of effort that you're putting into this class and why? And livelihood is, well, I'm getting to that in a minute. Again, can you just look around the room? I'm imagining 20, 25 other students of your peers. Just look around quietly. Do they look alive? Now they might be breathing, their eyes might be open, but do you understand what I'm saying? Is there a sense of a drive, a passion? Again, I can imagine the answer to that. So you just learned the Eightfold Path, kind of in my own way. Back to my little wheel here. So I like to think of the Eightfold Path as, I know you probably can't see that very well. That's okay. We'll just go through this together. So I think of it as 3, 3, and 2. So the first three, Now let's back up a second. When we talk about the right understanding, or the right, when Buddhists talk about the right understanding or the right action, which, like I said, I'll get to in a minute. What I like to interpret that as more accurate to the truth, not necessarily right, meaning. Well, I hopefully you get the meaning here. What I mean by this is like closer to a truth. So let's go back to what are you learning? So it's the right or truthful understanding. What are you learning right now and why? What are you seeing? Look around the room. What words are being spoken? What's your action, your level of effort, and your livelihood right now? And then focus, a concentration, and meditation, or I like to consider that like contemplation. All right, so back to our little wheel. So speech, understanding, view, your own little SUV, right? Action, livelihood, effort, ale, concentration, and meditation. Now we just go back to lesson number 1, which is what are your needs right now? What do you want? Are your needs being met? In iSchool, you're number 1. You are in a system right now that maybe is, well, in my estimation, is contributing to suffering, certainly. How is the Eightfold Path a way out? Or in my case, a way through? I think it's really kind of understanding, again, maybe the nature of public education, why you're here. At its root, at its core. So let's just have a little pop quiz, a little test, if you will. I use the word freedom because I think hopefully we would all agree that that's what we say we are trying to achieve, is freedom. Yeah? Well, let's back up. You're sitting in a public school right now, in many cases against your will because you are legally obligated to be here. Yes, you are sitting in a desk at arguably the physical prime of your life. You're not outside. You're not getting exercise. Heck, some of you might not even have windows to look out of right now. And you're there for hours. So what is the nature of why you're here? Yeah, this is all just going to kind of come together. So the 4 knowable truths by following the Eightfold Path coincides with the first lessons we've gone over. Just a quick review. We'll be doing this a bunch. You're number 1. We live in a pretty rigid system, I think. We'll just skip that again for now. And you can just ask yourself, do you believe this? Do you think that public school is contributing to your suffering? Is it due to expectations? Again, not what your needs are being met right now, how your needs are being met. But it's you're there to get a grade, to get a piece of paper. So what's the real reason why you're here in school? I would just caution you, if you want to start talking about this to somebody, I caution you because I have found that people don't necessarily understand this. You might if you just kind of follow along, maybe. But I'm just kind of plugging away here. So number 1, number 2, number 3 is A through E. Breathe conscientiously and dine enthusiastically while enjoying the 5 senses. So you can practice that right now. If you start getting agitated, maybe it's like, yeah, why am I here? This is silly. Why am I taking these classes? Did I really choose these classes, or were they chosen for me? And then you're supposed to sit there and kind of just like it and say you're not suffering. I think you are. And again, that's why I'm here. Stick with me. There is a way through, but I think first is the hard part, which is really getting more truthful about the circumstances. Yeah? Okay, and then next week we're going to talk about my version interpretation of Confucius' 5 relationships and values. Stay tuned.